Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never imagined a simple summer barbecue could unravel my entire week. Maybe even my marriage. My name's Ollie, I'm 37, and I've been married to Clara for 10 years. We've had a solid relationship, built on routines, laughter, and the occasional argument that ended in us laughing more than we fought. But last Saturday, everything shifted. The barbecue was at our neighbor's house. A small, sunny backyard with fairy lights strung across the fence. The smell of grilled corn and burgers hanging in the warm evening air. Clara was there, chatting casually with some friends, her cocktail glass in hand, perfectly poised like she always is. I was trying to catch up with our single neighbors, a couple who had moved in 6 months ago, Milo and Tessa. They were friendly, easygoing, and the kind of people you felt like you could have a spontaneous adventure with. I had just been talking to Milo about his recent backpacking trip through Scotland when Clara leaned over from the patio table, her tone unusually sharp for such a casual setting. "Ollie," she said, loud enough for a few neighbors to hear, "why don't you just go on your honeymoon alone?" Honestly, I don't care. I froze. 1,000 thoughts spun in my head. Did she not care about me? About us? About the 10 years we had built together? I opened my mouth to reply, but she waved me off and walked back to the group. The words felt like an icy splash against my chest. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I wandered toward the small garden, trying to process what just happened. That's when Tessa, who had been quietly observing the tension, stepped closer. She smiled, a little mischievous but genuine. "You know," she said softly, "I don't think you should go alone. I can go with you if you want." The offer caught me completely off guard. My mind whirled. Tessa was a neighbor, a friend, yes, but she was also fun, kind, and the exact kind of person who made life feel lighter. And here she was, casually offering me companionship on something that was supposed to be a private, romantic escape. I laughed nervously, unsure if I should say yes, unsure if it was even appropriate. Before I could answer, Clara's voice cut through the soft hum of conversations. "What did you just say?" Her tone was sharp, trembling slightly, as if she was trying to mask how much she cared, how much this tiny spark of jealousy burned inside her. I looked up and saw her eyes widen, the cocktail glass now halfway forgotten in her hand. I just meant..." I stumbled over words I didn't even know I wanted to say. Tessa gave me a small, encouraging nod, her smile never faltering. Clara's lips pressed together, tight, and she took a step closer, the heat of her jealousy almost tangible in the midsummer air. The neighbors seemed to notice the tension but wisely backed off, leaving us in a bubble of unspoken emotions. "You would go with her?" Clara's voice rose, a mixture of disbelief and something darker, something that sounded like fear. I shook my head quickly, but my denial didn't seem to reach her. The anger in her eyes was sharp, sudden, and raw, a storm that I had never expected from her, especially not over what I had thought was a harmless conversation. Milo, sensing the awkwardness, stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. "Clara, it's just a joke, right? Let's not make it weird." But she didn't hear him. Her gaze never left me, and I suddenly realized that beneath her anger, there was a tremor of something I hadn't anticipated, vulnerability. It hit me then, in a way that made my chest tighten, that Clara cared. She might act indifferent sometimes, distant sometimes, but that fiery reaction was proof she still did. And perhaps that was exactly what I had been missing. A clear signal of emotion that wasn't mediated by words or routine, a raw, unfiltered reaction that reminded me that we were still alive as a couple, still capable of intense feelings. Tessa, unaware of the sudden intensity, laughed lightly, a little nervous, and said, "I didn't mean to cause drama, honestly." But her words barely registered. Clara's hands clenched into small fists at her sides. I could see her trying to process her own jealousy, her pride, and her love all at once. The air was thick, heavy with tension, and for a moment, I felt suspended between two realities. One, where I simply laughed it off, ignored Clara's reaction, and continued my conversation with Milo and Tessa as if nothing happened. The other, more pressing and terrifying, demanded that I respond, that I acknowledge Clara's emotions, that I reconnect with her before this minor spark ignited into a wildfire of misunderstanding. I stepped closer to Clara, cautiously, unsure how she would react. "Clara," I said softly, I don't want to go with anyone else. I only ever wanted us to enjoy this trip together. I didn't expect you to react like that." Her eyes softened for a fleeting moment, the tightness in her jaw giving way to a flicker of vulnerability. But then she shook her head slightly, muttering, "I just don't want to feel replaced." I understood immediately. It wasn't about Tessa. It was about her, about our years together, about the comfort and security she felt when we were the only two navigating this life. And in that moment, I realized how fragile and precious the balance between love and neglect can be. How a single word, a single thoughtless offer, could trigger an avalanche of hidden fears. I reached for her hand, not aggressively, just gently, and she didn't pull away. That small gesture, so simple yet so loaded with meaning, was a bridge across the tension. For the first time since the comment at the barbecue, we were connecting again, even if the air was still tense and thick with unspoken feelings. And just as I felt a slight relief, Tessa stepped back politely, sensing the delicate moment. Milo coughed awkwardly and started chatting with another guest, leaving us standing in the backyard, alone in the dimming sunlight, surrounded by the faint smell of barbecue and lawn clippings. I could feel my heart pounding in a way that was part fear, part excitement, the way it always does when love is real and raw, when vulnerability is exposed, and when a relationship is reminded of its own fragility. That night, as we left the barbecue and drove home in silence, I realized that nothing about this would be simple. Our honeymoon plans were now complicated, not by logistics or finances, but by emotions, by pride, by unspoken fears that had now been laid bare in the open summer air. And somewhere in that tension, in that awkward, unpredictable moment, I felt the spark again. The spark that reminded me why I had fallen in love with Clara in the first place, and why I would fight for that spark no matter how fragile it seemed. The next morning, the sun poured through our bedroom window, warm and unapologetic, as if nothing from the previous evening had happened. I sat on the edge of the bed, coffee in hand, thinking about Clara, Tessa, and that fleeting moment in the backyard. My mind replayed her eyes, the way they had softened and then hardened again, the silent plea for reassurance she hadn't said aloud. Clara came into the kitchen, her hair slightly messy, a soft cardigan wrapped around her. She didn't speak immediately, just poured herself some coffee and leaned against the counter. I could tell she was processing her own emotions as much as I was. "Ollie," she said finally, her voice quieter than the night before. "About last night." I put my mug down, giving her my full attention. "I know," I said softly. "It wasn't about Tessa. I think I forgot to make you feel like I see you, that you're the only person I want on this trip. That's my fault." Clara's gaze lingered on me for a moment, searching for sincerity, for evidence that I wasn't just saying the words to ease tension. "You really mean that?" she asked, almost whispering. "I do," I replied, reaching for her hand. This time, she didn't hesitate, and our fingers intertwined naturally. There was a pause, a quiet space where we didn't need words to understand each other. The tension had shifted from confrontation to connection. But the tension of the previous night hadn't disappeared entirely. We both knew that moments like that, sudden and raw, could erupt at any time if we weren't careful. It was a reminder of how fragile our love could feel when life, work, bills, routines, pressed in from all sides. I decided to call Milo and Tessa later that morning, partly to smooth things over and partly to acknowledge the awkwardness of the previous night. Milo picked up immediately, his easygoing tone breaking the heaviness in the air. "Morning, Ollie. About last night, I hope we didn't cause any drama." I chuckled nervously. "No, you didn't. Honestly, Tessa's offer was generous, but it made me realize how much I want Clara to feel like she matters. That she's the reason I go on this trip, not anyone else." There was a pause on the other end, Then Milo laughed softly. That's fair, man. Sounds like you two have some work to do, but also some fun ahead. Don't worry, we've got your back. No awkward neighbor drama. Tessa chimed in, her voice light and teasing. Just make sure you don't forget us when you're sipping cocktails on the beach, Ollie. I laughed, feeling the tension from the night before finally ease, replaced by gratitude for friends who understood boundaries. Not a chance, I said. See you around the neighborhood. After hanging up, I turned to Clara, who had been quietly observing me from the kitchen doorway. See, I said. They understand. Nothing to worry about. She smiled faintly, a small victory, but her eyes still carried the shadow of last night's jealousy. I don't want to feel replaced. Even for a second, she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. I get it, I said, pulling her close. And I promise you won't. This trip, our honeymoon, it's about us. No one else ever. Clara's head rested on my shoulder, and for a moment, the chaos of the previous night felt like a distant memory. But beneath the comfort, I sensed an undercurrent of truth. Relationships like ours, built over years, aren't just maintained by routine or words alone. They're maintained by moments like this, moments where vulnerability is acknowledged, where pride is set aside, and where love is actively chosen every single day. The day passed in a blur of packing, checking reservations, and quiet conversations. Clara and I laughed more than we had in weeks, sharing small memories and inside jokes that reminded us why we had chosen each other in the first place. The tension of jealousy had transformed into intimacy. Not explosive fireworks, but the quiet, steady warmth of a love that had endured years of life's pressures. That evening, we stepped outside onto the porch, watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. Clara leaned against the railing, and I joined her, our fingers intertwined again. You know, she said softly, I was scared last night, scared that maybe I'd lost you, or that I wasn't enough. I shook my head, pressing a kiss to her temple. You'll never lose me. Not because of jealousy, not because of anyone else. You're my partner, Clara. Always have been, always will be. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of 10 years, of shared meals, quiet arguments, late-night talks, and moments of compromise. They carried the weight of commitment, of mutual understanding, and of love that was deep enough to survive a single misstep. Later that night, as we finally packed the last suitcase into the car, Clara paused and looked at me, a mischievous glint returning to her eyes. You know, she said, smiling, maybe you should still invite Tessa on the trip, just for moral support. I laughed, shaking my head. Not a chance. This is our time. She laughed too, the sound light and freeing, the tension finally gone. And in that laughter, I felt a quiet certainty. Love, like life, isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, fragile, and easily disrupted. But it's also resilient, capable of surviving awkward moments, misunderstandings, and jealousy, as long as both people are willing to face it together. That honeymoon, which I had once imagined as a simple escape, suddenly felt like more than that. It was a testament to patience, understanding, and the quiet power of connection. And as we drove off the next morning, the open road ahead of us, I knew one thing for certain. No neighbor, no comment, no fleeting jealousy could ever replace what we had. Clara reached over and squeezed my hand. Ready? She asked. Always, I replied, a smile tugging at my lips. And for the first time in weeks, everything felt exactly as it should, fragile, yes, but ours.